While serving his country in the jungles of Vietnam, Army sniper Mack Bolan received some distressing news from home that his father went berserk, slaughtered his own family, and gave himself a lead lobotomy. The only surviving member of the family is Bolan's 14-year-old brother, who tells him that their father was under constant pressure from local loan sharks for some debt he'd accumulated, and that their sister had been forced into a life of prostitution in order to pay off those debts. Realizing that the authorities won't do anything to help him, Bolan decides to bring the ruthless violence of war stateside with a new target, the local Mafia. And thus the genre of men's action-adventure novels was born. War Against the Mafia is as unpretentious of a novel as any can get, a story about a lone wolf protagonist engaging in a one-man war against seemingly insurmountable odds, an army of unethical shitheels with their fingers in every dirty pie imaginable, especially prostitution. Pendleton didn't write this book or create the Executioner series to hop onto a soapbox and preach to the reader, but to supply readers with an ultimately fun experience. Bolan is a one-man army using the skills and tactics he learned in his military service to fight back against a looming threat far more immediate than the Viet Cong. He's the type of action hero we almost never see in contemporary fiction, a guy with a straightforward moral code who doesn't just kill anybody who's in his way, only the Mafia bosses and the hired goons who protect them. In fact, you could argue that Bolan's character would later serve as the inspiration behind characters like Harry Callahan, the film version of John Rambo, the Paul Kersey of the Death Wish film sequels, and John Matrix from Commando. Hell, even Marvel Comics writer Jerry Conway admitted that his main source of inspiration in creating the Punisher was Pendleton's Executioner character. Pendleton wastes no time in setting up the story, establishing the main players, and getting the action moving along, which is appropriate given that the book is only 220 pages long. The story moves at the speed of an action film, and Pendleton never goes too far in depth when it comes to describing the action or environments. He gives you just enough information so that you're not forced to fill in unnecessary gaps, but leaves out just enough so that you can use your imagination. In short, this novel is fast, pulpy, and action-packed. While it is bigger than life, the story is still grounded in reality, and Bolan doesn't just breeze through everything unscathed. Pendleton's military experience also serves to elevate the action. For those of you who don't know, Don Pendleton was a war veteran, having fraudulently enlisted in the U.S. Navy at the ripe age of 14 in 1941. He served in World War II in all theaters, with his enlistment ending in 1947, and he returned to active duty from 1952 to 54, serving in the Korean War. His understanding of military combat tactics helps to further ground the action in reality and make the actions Bolan takes all the more believable. As far as the characters go, Mack Bolan is the prototypical action movie protagonist, a man of action with the skills and brains to carry out his objectives. He doesn't just kill at whim, but methodically wears down the Mafia with constant sneak attacks and sabotaging their business before the novel's climactic showdown. Despite this character being as deep as a damp floor, at least on the surface, it's still a blast seeing what Charles Bronson badassery he's gonna do next. There is a police lieutenant Bolan is in constant contact with throughout the book, Lieutenant Weatherby, who serves as a source of information for him, as the police has an undercover agent in the Mafia, and a voice of reason that constantly tries to talk Bolan into giving up his fight. The women are mainly paper-thin characters who, more often than not, are there to flash some tits at Bolan and ride his trouser snake. I'd call this a gripe, but that would be hypocritical of me considering I'm a huge fan of the James Bond films, and many of Bond's female love interests in the movies were there to have 3½ inches of 007 for breakfast. The main Mafia players we meet, accounting for manager Plasky, playboy Walt Seymour, and head honcho Sergio Frenchie, are simply there to be targets in Mack Bolan's crosshairs. The only other Mafia player we meet is a guy named Leo Turin, who was apparently instrumental in forcing Bolan's sister into a life of prostitution, and he is a scumbag outside of that, at least on the surface. There's much more to his character than we're initially led to believe, and he would actually go on to become a series regular as the books progressed. The final verdict on War Against the Mafia? If you simply want a good, enjoy it, shut your brain off narrative, this book is definitely worth your time.